It is a beautiful day in Los Angeles, and I'm here today to visit this extraordinary building. It's in the heart of the downtown neighborhood, and if you haven't already guessed, it is, of course, the Los Angeles Public Library's Central Branch, an amazing building on the outside, but also amazing on the inside too. Just take a look at this ceiling. And while you're doing that, let me tell you that the library is home to over 6 million books, including audiobooks and periodicals, as well as CDs and DVDs. There is also up-to-date information from journals and encyclopedias. And the library is also home to something called Tessa, which is the photographs and digital collections, which has over 120,000 photographs, posters and maps and other collections. There is also an amazing e-media resource, and that includes e-books and videos that can be borrowed. And on the Los Angeles Public Library's website, something called Freegal, one of my favorite places where you can download free music. And today I'm here in the Los Angeles Public Library's Literature and Fiction Department. And as you can see, something going on with these shelves here, behind which is a rather brilliant resource for poets. And I'm just taking a couple of back issues here from the magazines that are displayed on these shelves. And I'm going to talk, you'll hear me talk in a short while, in rather hushed tones, because after all, we are inside the public library. And yes, I'm locked away in one of the study rooms here, but there is no roof on the study room, so I'm going to try to keep the volume to a minimum. Hopefully you'll still be able to hear me. In this video, I'm going to talk all about the literary magazine scene. The literary magazine scene is incredibly important to poets, just as poets are very important to the literary magazine scene. It is extremely likely that the first published work of a poet will be in the pages of a literary magazine. There's also, within the pages of those magazines, an interesting relationship that takes place between established writers and emerging writers. Emerging writers, incredibly proud, and rightly so, to have their poem in that same magazine alongside the name of a famous, well-regarded poet. But people don't often think it works the other way. It certainly does. Established poets looking to the emerging generation of poets to see exactly what they're doing with poetry, what they're doing with language, and the themes that are prevalent in their work. There is also a great deal of diversity within the literary magazine scene. You will have some magazines that have a very focused perspective. It may be that they are representing the voices of underrepresented poets. It may be that actually that focus is to do with not just the aesthetics or the content of the poetry, but the form. And there are magazines that, for example, specialize in prose poetry. Or I've got one right here that I've just pulled off the shelf called Modern Haiku. There are also those magazines then that occupy the kind of middle lane. They publish the names of the most famous poets, but also pull in from the edges all these diverse voices to broaden the reach of their magazines. So you might think, with all this diversity within the literary magazine scene, that actually it was an industry that was thriving, that was a buzz, that was alive. And yet year after year, what actually happens is we see magazines go to the wall, not able to financially continue, and closing their doors forever. That may happen for any number of reasons, but today I want to talk about the disparity between the huge volume of poets submitting their work to literary magazines and then the much, much lower level of people who actually subscribe to those magazines. This is a glaring disparity, and one that really needs to be addressed. Here's the thing, it's not enough for me just to leave my front door, leave my home, and walk to the nearest store, walk in and expect to buy a pair of shoes without knowing what that store is and what it sells. I can't walk into the nearest butcher shop and demand to buy a pair of shoes. There has to be a little more research involved. It's not enough that I have money to spend, I want to buy something, and here's a store that sells stuff. It's vitally important for poets to do their homework in order for their work to find its way into the pages of these literary magazines. Let me give you one example. Imagine the poet has written the most amazing poem. It's a long-form poem over 10 pages, and they've heard of a certain magazine. They know it publishes poetry, and they know it's highly regarded. So they send this literary journal this very fine example of their work without knowing, in fact, that that literary magazine actually specializes in publishing short-form poems. There is 0% chance of that poet's work being published in the pages of that magazine, and time and resources have been wasted. Additionally, it must be very depressing as a literary editor to receive that submission, open it, and know that the poet submitting the work has done zero homework in terms of knowing about the magazine and its aesthetic. You should buy at least a couple of back issues of a literary journal or magazine. Another thing you can do is to subscribe to a literary magazine. A lot of literary magazines also have prizes, so it could be a single poem prize or a chapbook prize, and there is of course usually a fee attached to that submission. But here's something really good. Some magazines, like some of the ones I've got here on the desk in front of me, actually include in the cost of the prize entry a year's subscription to the magazine. That is a brilliant resource for the poet. Usually you're submitting the work, you're paying the fee, and in most cases you're not going to win the competition because the odds are stacked against us, all of us. That's the nature of the competition. But maybe you've learned something, maybe it's been a valuable experience working towards deadlines, preparing your manuscripts, getting it to a place that you're happy with before submitting. But ultimately that money's gone. However, with some magazines, such as these ones I'm holding here, the price of the entry fee is also a year's subscription. So every few months, a copy of the magazine is going to pop through your mailbox. What's great about this magazine, Rattle, which is an LA-based magazine, is that together with each quarterly copy of the magazine, you also get a copy of the prize-winning chapbook. So what a great resource for poets to have, get your hands on. Not only do you get to read all the fabulous poetry within the magazine, but you also look at the prize-winning chapbooks and can think about how that fits with the aesthetic of the magazine and where your work might fit within that. I think it was the editor of this magazine I've just referenced who once said that if you really, really like a poem in a literary magazine, then you have something in common with the editor. They really liked it too. They published it. So think about how that actually then reflects on your connection to that magazine and how well it might suit your own work. So you can buy a couple of back issues of a literary magazine, you could subscribe to the magazine, or you could enter a competition that includes a subscription to the magazine, or you could go online, and the magazine I just showed you, this literary journal, Rattle, has a quite fantastic online presence. It really is a very, what I would call a big magazine. There's so much going on in it that at first I thought I would be daunted by the website, but quite the opposite. It's so well organized and easy to navigate that actually it's just a brilliant resource for poets and poetry lovers. So you can find a lot of information, and also you will find content, poetry, on those websites too. But the last link in the chain is to come to a place like this, a central library, and seek out the reference section of periodicals. Here is Poetry, Poets and Writers, New England Review, and countless other literary magazines. Here's Modern Haiku, and they even have, I'm very happy to say, here in Los Angeles, the London Review of Books. Now, you can't take these literary journals out of the library, but what you can do is come and sit and read and learn about the magazines for free. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please do click the like and the subscribe button. And as you probably know, I'll be back very soon with more poetry content.